Hello all, welcome to another endgame study of the Solving Other Studies to Improve Chess Calculation series. This position was created by the Ukrainian chess composer Sergiy Didukh. I have already presented him in a previous video. It's a tip. The video talks about the thematic false leads that he brings for the chess compositions, which are brilliant in my opinion. As always, I suggest you watch the guide so you are better prepared for the practice. And then the 10-minute countdown, the main one, will start. And I catch you back with the beginning of the guided solution. And here we are. Okay, I think the first moves are easy because white wants to draw, of course, over here. And the only way to do it is to advance the pawn, so threatening to promote it. So I don't think this is very hard, but of course, forced moves. So let's go with it. Now it's black to play. Okay, black plays f5, of course, the only way to go and control the immediately promotion of our c pawn. Of course, over here, if it's going to d6, it's the same, so we need to take. And now it's black to play again. Again, we are now controlling the advancing of the pawn, so now we need probably to bring our knight, but how? Well, we have two options. We have the option of going with the pawn to f5, let's see, but this is what Didukh calls the thematic false lead. What is a false lead? Well, it's a variation that we go through with calculation and then we find out some new information that we apply to the next try. Let's see how that works. Okay, so now the immediately way for white to go for a win is okay to play king c6. Now we go with our knight. Of course, this was the first idea to go f7, to the knight to f7. Now white can force the advancing of the pawn, which forces, of course, black to use that maneuver of bringing the knight to fork now the king and the pawn. But why the pawn move is going to be important? It's because now the king is threatening the two pieces, so one is going to grab the pawn, but the other is going to be lost, which would not happen if we had played f6. So we have learned something from the thematic try in this situation for the opponent, for the defense. And so we find out that it's better to go f6. Why? Now, because of course it's white to play, the move won't work. So going with the king c6, this doesn't work because now the knight can go with the same idea to f7. Now we force the advancing of the pawn. We get the fork. The king approaches the two pieces, but of course now they are being protected, and so there is no way for white to win this one. Even if it wins the pawn, which is not a big deal at the moment, because of course, as you know, black can win with bishop and knight. So just brings the king. Now we are going just to block the pawn. So first we can block the c pawn, but there are more moves, of course, over here. Now we bring the knight to block the other ones, and as you can see over here, there's nothing that white can do. It's not going to be possible to approach the pawn. Our king, as black, is going to approach, and so this doesn't work. So we learned already the useful tries of the thematic false leads. So in this situation, we learn, okay, we can't go with the king to c6 and go with the original idea of promoting and forcing the pawn. So now it's white to play, of course, and another minute. This is the first time in the series that I'm going to use this position two times. I'm going to give you countdown two times. So let's go with the first one. 1 minute for you. Find the best continuation for white. And let's go for another move. Okay, we already saw that king c6 doesn't work because black was able to learn something from the thematic false lead that we had before. Okay, other moves from white over here is to promote for a queen with the idea, okay, now we attack the bishop, so we are going to force a sacrifice from black, but black, of course, has other ideas. Instead of going with the bishop, black brings the knight, so when we promote to the queen, the knight is the one that sacrifices, because in the end, we are going to be able to push the pawn, so we are going to keep protecting. The white pawns are blocked at the moment, the king will help, and so this is an easy win for black. So other tries over here, and before revealing the correct move, we are going to go with another thematic false lead, another try, and that one that Didukh offered us is to go with the king b7. So let's find out why king b7 fails. Of course, black is going to bring the knight. We can promote to a queen. This is obvious because we are just going to suffer a fork, and after the king moves, well, the pieces are already protecting. So this is an easy win for black. So we can promote it now. Another interesting idea that we also can learn something about it is to offer the d pawn now. So forcing the bishop to take it, of course. Now we promote to the queen. And of course, the correct move over here is to go with the bishop. So the bishop takes with check, so the king moves, and now we are able to bring our king as black. And when, of course, the king comes to try to get our remaining pawn, of course, black is going with knight g5, and when the king touches the pawn, we are going to protect with the knight e4. Notice that we are very close to losing this one as black, to draw this one as black, but when the king now is in contact with the two pieces, and notice that this position is very important, well, the king moves, and now, of course, the king needs to move away, and whatever the move is, black is going to keep the both pieces and go for a win. But of course, on this thematic try, uh, well, black is just going to take with the bishop, as we saw, and avoid that mistake. So without this being possible, and we need to keep our pawn, white finds another interesting idea. Why don't we promote to a knight instead of a queen or another piece? Because now, well, the d6 pawn is protected, and so the king can come, force again another sacrifice, and so this is an important moment over here. It's black to play, and black is still going for a win. And black needs to understand very well what's going on the position. We need to count moves, because the secret is, of course, we are going to lose one piece. So, but if we go directly with the bishop, this just allows the king in one tempo to get the bishop, and now the race is not going to be favorable for black anymore, because now we check the king. The king now, of course, attacks the knight, so the knight comes to protect the pawn, but notice that the black king is too far away, and so even if he tries to approach, well, it's not going to be on time. The king is now attacking two pieces. Of course, let's say we move, well, we can't move nothing over here. We need to, let's say, check, but okay. Notice that black just remains with one knight, so it's lost the opportunity to draw, to win over here, sorry. So without this being able, black needs to find the key move, which is to move the king now. And what is the idea? Okay, now if it's white to play and goes with the king c7, we now take the knight. So notice that the difference is we have one tempo with moving the king, because the king, of course, needed to waste one tempo before taking the bishop back. And now it's going to be different. So the knight takes the pawn with check. Now it comes and protects the pawn. So the king now attacks the pawn, but it's already protected by the knight. The king goes to f5, so attacking the two pieces from black. But of course, now the king moves, and now the king needs to move away, so allowing the king to enter and get everything protected. Then the knight just goes on and grabs the remaining pawns, and with one less pawn, black is able to win over here. So this was really an important try to go with the knight and then moving the king. Notice that it was a very important way to win it, and we need to learn from it. Okay, let's go for the first position. I haven't revealed the move yet, and I will offer you one more minute, because we already saw, okay, going with the pawn to promote is not possible, going with the king c6 also not possible, and going with the king b7 also not possible. So how can I save this one? How can I draw with white? Another try on the same position, and I will come back. And a brilliant move from white, that it's something that we need to learn about it with the false tries that we have tried, is to go with the pawn e4, double exclamation mark, brilliant move. Let's try to understand it. This is going to take a bit. If you aren't already seeing it, it's going to be a really surprise. So the knight goes to f7, so the same move, and white sacrifices the pawn again. Okay, so the first thing we need to notice over here is, of course, black needs to accept the pawn, but with which piece? And of course, we have learned already that taking with the pawn, of course, lost control about bringing the knight to e5 while being supported by the pawn. Let's see that in action. So the king now moves to c6. This is good for white, of course. Now the pawn advances, and we go with the same idea. So we advance the pawn, forcing the knight now to give the check. But now we just attack the two pieces, and when the bishop takes the pawn, of course, the king can grab the other piece, and so we get a draw over here. So we already are learning something from the thematic false lead. So we need to grab it with a knight. Of course, now it's white to play, and white goes with the same idea, goes with the king b7. Now this must work according to Didukh. We already tried this one, but there are a small and very decisive change in the position. So the knight comes to c4, so just to force next move from white. Of course, now white needs to promote with the knight. Taking, we already saw that was a possibility for black, and so black needs to come with the king. So this is the smart move that we saw before in the false try, where we went with the bishop taking directly and not allowing us as black to win one tempo. So the smart move is to bring the king, and only after we are going to go after the pawn. So over here, the correct move from white is to go king c7. Of course, now the bishop takes the knight. Notice that before, if you try something crazy like king c6, well, the bishop just takes the knight, and even if we advance the pawn, we get that same problem of every piece is protected from black, so not working anymore. So the king really needs to go to c7, and of course now it's the moment where black takes the knight. Of course, going with knight e5, which is a crazy move again, doesn't work because white just keeps the knight going on. So from here, it's a draw. So we need to really take the knight. So this is, as you can see, forced move. So the king takes the bishop. That's no doubt about it. We are more or less in the same sequence of moves that we already saw. Check the king. The king attacks the knight, so the knight comes to protect the pawn. And so the king goes to attack the two pieces. So now we approach the black king. The king gets the same position. And suddenly it's black to play. And what we found that if black plays to d5, well, we just have an extra square for our piece. So it's a zugzang, but instead of being white to play, we can change and shift the direction of the zugzang to black by playing e3 and drawing the game. Okay, before going to that very smart finish, that's why we have sacrificed the pawn. Finally, we understood everything that went before. So if you go and review every move, you are going to see how smart it is to find from every thematic false lead why it was important to give away the e3 pawn. So over here, black tries another trick. So it's the last moment for you. Just another minute to finish this one. It's white to play and to go for a draw. And I believe this one is easy, but we need to keep paying attention. And correct move is to go back to e6. Don't make the mistake of coming down to f4, because this just allows black to remove the knight. And from what you can see, it's white that is in trouble. It's going to lose the remaining pawn, and after that, black is going to win. So this was just for us to keep attention. So this is a position where we can keep the zugzang going on. So it's black to play again. Notice that the knight can't move, otherwise we grab the pawn. The pawn also can't advance, so the king needs to move. The king goes to e3. Now it's white to play again, and again we get that same position, forcing black to come back, and then we just can, and we'll draw this one. So let's go for the main line, the solution that the author offers, so to bring this in a very stylish finish. And of course, we get this same position from every thematic false lead. And now we are going to be able to draw, because every move that now black does, either we get the pawn or we get the knight. So it was really crazy one when we were back here and we went with this one, and over here we get this e4 brilliant one, because we have discovered the pawn was not needed. In fact, it was being an obstacle to draw this one. Okay, this was more or less a long one, hard one. Hope, nevertheless, you have enjoyed as much as I do. And of course, I catch you up in future videos. Bye bye, and keep checking.